Let's get into it now. A spoiler-free movie review of I Know What You Did Last Summer. This movie is both a sequel and a reboot to the original one from 1997. I really think the franchise that did this best was Scream in 2022. They are the ones who kind of coined that term of requel, where they continue the storyline from the original, but then bring in a whole new cast of characters. And let me say, even before I watched this movie, I thought, how are they even going to remotely make this movie make sense? Given that just by watching the trailer, you know that the exact same thing happens to this new group of kids that happened to them in the original. What are the odds? Because that's what this movie is also about. 5 friends cause a car accident. They make a pact to cover it up. Next summer rolls around. They get a handwritten note, I know what you did last summer. And then they have to bring in the help of some of the original cast members from the movie from 1997, Freddie, Prinze Jr. and Jennifer Love Hewitt. But you have a bunch of new fresh blood in this one. So just going into it, I thought, how are they going to make this happen again? How are they going to make it make sense? Because it's a whole lot different than when Scream does it, because Scream, that person can be anybody. But I gave them the benefit of the doubt. I went into this movie with a pretty open mind, knowing it wasn't going to be anything super and complex. But I think what I liked about Scream and the way they did it is they made it a little bit more sinister. And those Ghostface was a little bit more menacing. They aged the mask a little bit. Going into that, I felt like I was going to watch a little bit more of a brutal slasher than the ones that were so famous in the late 90s and early 2000s. But what I got, and I Know What You Did Last Summer, it just wasn't it. And I think it's because of the acting. I know that horror movies like this, slashers, are always infuriating because you're like, why are you doing this? Why are you so dumb? But if you didn't have dumb characters in a slasher movie like this, nothing would happen. They wouldn't wander off by themselves. They wouldn't go hang out with sketchy people. So I understood that. But it wasn't just the dumb things they did in regards to what got them killed and what got some of these characters killed. It was just overall their interactions and the dialogue just felt so watered down. The only performances I really liked were Freddie Prinze Jr. and Jennifer Love Hewitt, because I think they were the best actors. Maybe it's because they had more experience with the franchise. They knew how to play it a little bit more. By the way, they both look fantastic. When they were on screen, I was invested in it. I would have just watched them two together. And I get you need teenagers, or in this case, they have them a little bit older. They're in college. You need younger people to make a story like this work. But I just would have watched them two get back together and have to deal with this killer again. Maybe something more like a Halloween, like how Jamie Lee Curtis keeps returning. I would have been more invested in that because everybody in the cast was so insufferable that I wasn't rooting for them to live. I wanted everybody to die. Like whenever the fisherman was on screen, I was like, take them all out because I cannot stand any one of these people. And I even think it's the way they are trying to keep this secret that had so much more weight to it in the original, like their initial pact. It felt a little bit more realistic. In this movie, nothing made sense. There were no consequences. Nobody was questioning anything. The adults in this movie were also just as insufferable, so it's not just the younger cast. It's everybody in Southport has 0 brain cells. The kills themselves were the only things I felt improved from the original one. Although, in this case, it's really hard to take the killer seriously because in the first movie, you still believe that it's just a regular person, but in this one, the killer almost has supernatural abilities. They kind of have a Michael Myers essence to them where they're attacking one minute and then the next minute they run away and they're gone. So it's harder to believe that there's actually a person behind this and not somebody supernatural. That part I didn't like because it almost felt like the person underneath it was just the shape. It felt just more generic horror movie that didn't quite work for me. I even rewatched the original movie going into this one just because I wanted to remember all the lore. And I was reminded of how much I rooted for Julie, how much I rooted for Ray, just how much chemistry all those actors had in that original, which was what made that movie significant, which is what made that movie get a sequel. This one, I never want to see any of these people ever again. And I think Madeline Klein is a good actor. I enjoy her in Outer Banks, but this role just wasn't it. I think just the way they decided to write her character just didn't really make you care about her. Her actions did not make sense because one thing happens and the next moment she forgets about it. her character just didn't learn anything, and you're like, come on, just get with it. And just the interactions between her and everybody else was so forced, and they also made it a point to just give you all this information at the very beginning, to tell you all the dynamics between everybody, to not show you their backstories, but deliberately tell you everybody's backstories and everybody's relationship, when it goes from when the accident first happens to then we jump forward a year after, just like it did in the original movie. They're just telling you all this information to try to get the story going, to try to get to the killing. It just really felt like they were juicing an onion by the end of the movie. And even though I don't have a whole lot of good things to say about this movie, for some reason, it was still entertaining. For some reason, I still needed to sit there in that theater till the very end to find out how this thing was going to wrap up, to find out who was going to be behind it in the end, and to find out whether or not it was actually worth my time. Just barely was this movie worth my time. I don't want to see them continue on, which whenever I saw Scream in 2022, I was all ready for the next one after that one, because I started to feel like, okay, they did a good job at rebooting this and also making a sequel. And I just think that the I Know What You Did Last Summer fan base just isn't quite as strong as anything else in the horror genre when you want to start pulling out movies that people feel nostalgic for. I don't think there's that much nostalgia here, because the killer themselves is not that interesting. The look of the character is not that interesting. I can't really buy into the hook as being one of the best horror weapons of all time. This suit itself just isn't that memorable when you're starting to put people up there like Jason Voorhees, Michael Myers, Chucky, like all those great people from slashers. Not even the best I Know What You Did Last Summer movie comes close to one of the worst movies from those franchises. And I think that is saying a lot, because there are some bad Halloween movies. There are some bad Friday the 13th movies. It just felt like they were really just banking on that nostalgia. They even make a point in the movie to call out nostalgia. And I love nostalgia. Look at this room around me right now. I live in nostalgia. Nostalgia will probably at some point in my life be the death of me. But it just didn't really bring back any feelings from when I watched the original. They tried to make all of Madeline Klein's fashion statements as impactful as Sarah Michelle Gellar's fashion statements. They tried with the cool cars. They tried with the romantic scenes. They tried with the blood. They tried with the guts. They tried with the action. But they did not capture the original energy of 1997's I Know What You Did Last Summer. The only thing that even made me want to go see this movie was the fact that Jennifer Love Hewitt was in it, and I'm glad she was, because if she wasn't, this movie would have been a total snooze fest. For I Know What You Did Last Summer, 2025, I give it 2 out of 5 hooks.